As I'm sure all of you know, because it's very important, the Rangers are playing the Devils at 7. So we have to be done way before that so I can get home on time. Charlie, whenever you're ready. As I'm sure all of you know, priority. All right, we're good. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining us for the April 18th REMAC meeting. At first, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the March 21st meeting. Anybody have any questions about the minutes? Concerns? Hearing none, motion to approve. Okay, so moved. Thank you, Dr. Krupe and Cooper. Okay, correspondence report. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. We've never voted on minutes. Ever.
Yes.
All right. We're gonna get there.
Third, I just wanted to welcome,
Correspondence report.
I want to welcome the paramedic students from the Borough of Manhattan Community College. Thank you for coming. I'd like to see more medic students here. And thank you to their instructor, Megan Williams. And yes, this is what your physicians act like. So,
Yes. It's real. That's all I'm gonna say. It's actually well behaved.
Okay, correspondence report. Membership, letters to be excused by Reed Caldwell, Robert Winkle, Wallace Carter. Okay, and we received a letter from NYPD ESU appointing Nicholas Bakari as alternate for Dr. Ed Jarvis.
Welcome, Dr. McCarry.
Glad you got your email.
Okay. From the fire department EMS, paramedic Romulus Montiago, EMT 397260 has been determined not to be able to provide ALS care in the 911 system. He has been allowed to continue providing BLS care in the 911 system. Also, FDNY's Medical Special Operations Conference will be held on May 4th to 7th. And we have the registration. We've given it out a few times. It's in your email. Okay. So New York State Bureau of EMS. Submissions for New York State EMS Council Awards for 2023 vital signs are being accepted at their on their webpage. The deadline is July 1st. And actually, here in New York City, we're asking for the awards to be given to us. I think it's by the end of this week or beginning of next week. We give out our awards in May, so we want them ahead of time, and then we'll forward the winners up to Albany. If you have anybody in mind, please submit it to us, and everything's on our webpage. It makes it very easy to submit. The Bureau of EMS has multiple EMS leadership briefings, and the next one is going to be held on April 20th, and after that, May 18th. Vital signs will be in Syracuse this year, October 19th to 22nd. Enforcement, Brianna Gonzalez, Bronx, New York, EMT 506783, suspended for 6 months. Daniel Koopman, Portland, Manor, EMT 434540, certification surrendered. Scott Sterling, Prospect, New York, EMT 223877, suspended for 1 year. Suspension is stayed and placed on probation. Civil penalty of $2,000. Casey Aldridge, Antwerp, New York, EMT 472276, suspended for 6 months. Placed on probation for 3 years and assessed a penalty of $500. Enforcement actions are all on the DOH website. Okay, a copy of an objection letter for proposed revisions to public health law was sent to Senator Brisport by Bed-Stuy Volunteer Ambulance Corps. They did this. We sent out template letters to ask agencies to assist us in objecting to new language. Okay, I'm not going to go over all the CME. It's going to be in the minute.
Okay.
And,
Any questions on the correspondence that you've heard?
The last thing is that we did send out copies of the executive budget and supporting documents. And that's still ongoing. The budget, discussions have been extended past the 17th, so we still have time to put in information.
Okay. I just want to, before we go on to the committee reports, I just want to bring your attention to the first, there is a bill that is in the Senate right now. Non-physicians tampering with medicine. It is it's a bill that is 5663. And it is in assembly right now, and it is something that is very scary as a physician in New York. Basically, it is legislating how we practice medicine, and it is something that you should reach out to your representatives and fight.
What's that bill number again?
It is 5663.
Senate or Assembly?
I believe it's an assembly.
That's the first one.
It doesn't, I just got the number.
There's an S.
Thank you. Thank you for that one.
It's an S.
That was very helpful. Well, I'll get to it. We'll send it out. We'll send it out via email, but there has been discussions about it. I know that NAMSP, there was a discussion about it. It's something that's very concerning when you read the language. And it's something that, you know, the executive committee did not meet since the last meeting, but there has been a lot of discussion with our state legislators about the Article 30 changes that are in the budget, as well as this assembly bill, which basically prohibits injecting a person with any substance, including but not limited to ketamine, by emergency medical personnel, law enforcement, or any entity without specific consent. So essentially, if somebody is unconscious or whatever it is, you would not be able to treat them without specific consent. So it is something that I think we really need to consider and argue and fight. Anyways, so that's something I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention. But that was the executive committee report. Let's go to subcommittee reports. We'll start with CNC, Dr. Barbara.
Hello, everybody. CNC committee last met on March 31st, virtually. With really no new topics discussed, continued management of the learning management system, the ongoing credentialing process. To date, data is still pending, but regarding situations that have occurred, we've pivoted some of the plans to continue maintenance of credentialing for the providers. I do want to open it up to Mr. Ward and Mr. Lax to see if they have any other pieces from this committee that are ongoing.
I think Mr. Ward should go first, so I don't steal his numbers like I did in the last meeting.
You have a bad habit of. Just to date, I think very roughly, about 150 paramedics have successfully recertified using the CME process with the LMS. There doesn't seem to be any major problems that I can go more into that, so I'm just going to something. But it seems to be working well. I mean, and the medics seem to be happy with the process. There's an abundance of CME available on there for everybody. And I haven't not really been getting any calls about people coming up short with CME scrambling in the last couple of weeks, like I used to with the refresher exam. So it all seems to be going relatively smooth.
Mr. Ward, of the 150, have there been any outliers or trouble made?
The outliers mostly seem to be the non-affiliated paramedics having difficulty getting medical director.
Do you want me to hold it from my report, or do you want to do? Well, do you have anything else?
No, I just say a couple of words and let you guys.
Okay, that's fine.
All right.
Training and report?
We'll hold it for training. Okay, any questions for Mr. Ward or Dr. Barbara? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to,
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, that was A5663, not S56.
correct, A is an apple.
Yes, that's right.
Currently includes
The S for 5663 is about occupational therapists.
No, we're not. I don't really worry about it.
6A, it's currently in closed, it is Senate co-sponsored.
Right, I know.
Thank you. All right, let's move on. Dr. Benelli, I'm just gonna hold off on medical standards first because I know you guys have the bulk of the work. So we're gonna wait first and come back to you. Thank you. Dr. Redlener.
There was been no quality meeting since the last time that REMAC met. We are meeting tomorrow at 5 p.m. To discuss matters of quality. Quality. Thank you.
Excellent. Any questions for Dr. Redlener? Okay, let's go to training and education, and then we're gonna come back to medical standards. Mr. Lack.
So training that right after CNC did on March 31st. I'll start off with the LMS report. So we kind of plateaued when it comes to general numbers of users and the protocol update. So I think we're mostly where we need to be with that. Don't know how many users we should have. That's the one outlier I don't have. So I should probably reach out to Department of Health, find out how many providers really there are in this region. But to date, there are approximately 10,600 users registered in the system. Since the launch, about 6,000 or so. Protocol update has about 10,000 people complete, so that's a bulk of those users. And 7,000 are BLS, and nearly 3,000 are ALS. In terms of CME usage on the site, there have been 136, including those that people were submitting retroactively. Agencies have been putting in CME events prior to the launch of the LMS date, so that they can log people's CME, because that goes directly into their transcripts. If you include that total number, that's over 9,100 attendees of these various CMEs. Since the launch, there have been 66 combined private and public, 38 private, 28 public. I drilled down a little deeper on this one just because I know that in the past, category A, which is physician contact time, was a problem, and 37 of those total were category A. So there's actually a lot more category A now than there was before, and compared to category B, which are only 29 of. That's, I think, is a pretty good distribution. Of the 11 public category A CMEs, 729 people attended. It's a pretty good amount of CME time that people are availing themselves of. Total attendees of these overall is 2,700 people that have attended all of them, including our town hall, 140 hours total. So that is your breakdown of that. The highlights of those include that town hall meeting that was very, very well attended, the Zoll Heart of the Hero tour, and the IA Med course that was offered at the MCC that got some regional CME time. In terms of the amount of, so this is the area that directly pertains to CNC. In terms of CME records uploaded into the system, there are close to 3,400 total records that have uploaded. 3,000 of those already have been processed by their agency training coordinators. These are the personal records that people are uploading from outside of the LMS to document their CME time in the system. It looks like of the 3,000 or so paramedics that are in the system, everybody is enrolled in the CME-based refresher in the site. As you heard from Kevin, about 150 completed already. And just a couple of interesting tidbits. There are links on there that medics, or actually any user, can click on. The CNC manual is actually accessed almost 300 times, and the links to the protocol were accessed about 400 or 500 times. So it's probably a good venue to place things, and we can actually track what people are clicking on and where they're going. In terms of what TNE discussed at the last meeting, probably our biggest piece of discussion was how to get the protocol update done on time next time. In order to get that done, our program is going to need to start in July. So we're going to need to work more directly with protocol to make sure that we have all the resources, or at least what has gone up to the state, so we can start building it out, knowing that there may be some changes prior to launch, but at least this way we can build that out with hopefully getting it done by October. So between October and November, it can be launched onto the site, so we can meet REMAC's January protocol go live dates. Doctors Redlener and Benelli are working with Khalid Islam from Training and Ed on that update to the stroke training. That is in process with the folks from the Bureau of Training Fire Department who were involved initially. Dr. Kosterko is going to be hosting a CME on use of the new pain management protocol that's going to take place next month. We're looking for REMAC physicians. As you see, anybody that is going to host CME, you're going to have people attending. especially the virtual ones. People are attending these things. Another thing that's being worked on is we have several members that are working on behavioral health emergencies. And we still would like to find some way to collaborate with other stakeholders in the region and beyond on de-escalation training. And the MCC is going to be hosting a verbal judo class on June 1st. That's still accurate. Yep. That is, have any questions?
Just to add on to Ms. Lex's report, like, we really want to have education coming from this body and the people that comprise this body going out throughout the region. And it seems to be the same people over and over again that are giving CME. And if you could find it in your hearts to do a virtual class and let it go through, we're breaking down those barriers to allow that content and you as a subject matter expert to be broadcast to the entire region. So I implore people to take the opportunity to teach to the people and interact with the people that are on the street.
Yeah, they're signing up.
Excellent. Any questions for Morty? Okay, hearing none. Let's move on to medical standards. Dr. Benelli.
Okay, so medical standards met on April 4th. Five virtually. And a couple of items are being brought as a second motion to medical standards. REMAC for approval. I'd like to mention and salute the that's the key. For the first time, virtual Zoom call system, which worked well. So to traveling with everyone else, so that's tremendous. So I think we'll just start with the protocols and just bring them up one by one. There are some protocols that will require a little further discussion. And so Dr. Lyon.
It's a lot of leeway.
Still warming up, so the first protocol that we want to bring forward will be the trauma center transport criteria. So I think that for one of the people that we're on. We have brought forward
and then I'll compare those with what our current protocol was. This was then went through RTAC and was vetted through the various subcommittees, including the pediatric subcommittee, where the only minor change that was made that was suggested from RTAC was to include suspected child abuse, that these patients should still be transported to the closest trauma center. So that was added onto this amended protocol that we see here. I apologize for a lot of like the red and the strike throughs, but a lot of it was reorganizing for this protocol. But hopefully everyone has had a chance to review this prior to this meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Lai. So all these protocols were emailed in advance. Everyone had a chance to review it. If there's any discussion, let's bring it up now. Okay. If not, I guess we have to
Any
approve it as a roll call.
Anybody have some questions about this protocol? It's consistent with ACS. It's consistent with all the changes that have been made. There should be any. Good problem. Let's try to do them all together.
Wait, sorry.
I don't know that we'll be able to do all of them together.
Okay, you want to do them separately?
I think it's gonna be easier.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so then let's do this. Let's start. We're gonna do them all separately. Okay. This is Asbury. Yes. Here you go. All right, so please listen for your names and in favor, opposed, or abstained.
the name, please say in favor, opposed, or abstained.
I'll be, yes. I wasn't expecting to be number one.
No.
Adrian Carl,
In favor?
Nicholas Alexander, Jeffrey Raybridge,
Favor.
Dr. Redlener,
Favor.
Dr. Shanker,
In favor.
Dr. Bo,
Next quick question. We sent a clean copy of this. Sure. I'm in favor, just wanted. Easy to follow when it's.
Dr. Trooper,
Well done. Well.
Thank you.
Dr. Jarvis,
Favor. Easily confused.
Dr. Cantor,
Drinking.
Dr. Ruby,
In favor?
Dr. Agicoli, Dr. Kessler,
They're here.
All right, we'll speak a little louder.
Cindy Basilios,
In favor.
Matthew Harris. Benjamin Zabar,
In favor.
Paul Barbara,
In favor.
David Benelli,
Yes.
Peter Wire.
Yeah.
So that's unanimous.
All right, next.
Great. So the next one is a change to the GOP section in terms of the definition for intravascular access, and specifically in reference to intraosseous access, where we did famously or infamously debate this during the last REMAC meeting. And it was brought back to protocol committee, where we then took a look at to see that in actuality, you know, we actually don't really define any sort of REMAC approved sites for intravascular access. So then we thought in the same vein that we would do the same for intraosseous access, and that it would not be specified to say via a REMAC approved site, since this would be determined by each agency's own individual medical director. So it's brought forward to remove the statement to says via a REMAC approved extremity site for intraosseous access.
So this discussion stemmed from whether originally it was written there, agency medical director, and then we wanted to change it to the agency medical director. And in the end, we just removed the agency medical director because for the logic that Dr. Lai just brought up. So let's open up for discussion if there's any.
Any questions? You're right. Okay. So this is the second motion from medical standards. You want to vote on this one? Dr. No.
I think.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
We're voting on intravascular access and medication administration. Pamela Lai,
In favor?
Adrian Coccarello,
In favor?
Nick Alexander.
Yeah.
Devin Howell. Jeffrey Raybridge,
In favor.
Reed Caldwell. Jonathan Berkeley. Michael Redlener,
In favor.
Joseph Bode,
Approved.
Arthur Cooper,
In favor.
Ed Jarvis,
Favor.
Mark Cantor. Robert Krupe,
In favor.
Laura Ivacoli. Matthew Fink. Cindy Basilios. In favor. Matt Harris. Benjamin Zabar,
In favor.
Paul Barbara,
In favor.
David Benelli,
Affirmative.
Peter Dwyer.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, you want to vote?
So we'll move on to the next.
Great. So the next protocol is another one that got sent back to the protocol committee, where we're taking a look specifically in our overdose protocol and then taking a look at the criteria. So the change is that we would like to propose to move the medical control option for sodium bicarbonate for prolonged QTC or any sort of suspected solicited overdose, to move that into the standing order section. This would be consistent with the state protocol. But after a little bit more research that was put onto the protocol committee, we took a look at specifically to look at the QTC intervals and to look to see what's going to be consistent with the current literature. So that has since changed since we have last saw it at our last REMAC meeting. So so in addition to moving the sodium bicarbonate to the standing orders, it will now be for a QTC greater than 500 milliseconds or QRS greater than 100 milliseconds.
So this discussion stemmed from, originally this language was in the medical control options, and the QTC interval, I think that was mentioned with 450. And then there was a question, why don't we make it 500? Because it's more unanimous, which seems reasonable, and that's what we're doing. But after additional research, as Dr. Lai said, we should also look at the QRS as an option as well, the QRS interval. That's just about it. There's any discussion? Cool. Let's vote on this. Very. Let's go.
Sorry. Document you're voting on. So we're voting on overdose adult and pediatrics. Pamela Lai,
In favor?
Adrian Cotarello,
Favor?
Nicholas Alexander, Jeffrey Raven.
In favor.
Michael Redland,
Favor.
Milton Bo, Arthur Cooper,
In favor.
Ed Jarvis, Mark Cantor,
In favor.
Robert Ruby,
In favor.
Laura Iacocca, Cindy Basilios. In favor. Matthew Harris. In favor. Benjamin Zabar,
In favor.
Paul Barbara,
Absolutely.
David Benelli,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer. Unanimously passed.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next protocol.
All right. All right, so the next protocol is, so it comes in two different versions. So the first one that we would like to propose, it was the version 1 that was sent out to everybody. So this is some changes that are made to our general pain management protocol, where hopefully I'll be able to kind of like walk everyone through the proposed changes, as there are quite a bit. The first change, I think the first big obvious change that people will see is that the ordinance of the options are different, where now that we do put the non-opioid options as being ahead of the opioid options on here. So we'll have the option A as the acetaminophen, and option B is the ketorolac, and then so on and so forth after that. There is also the addition of PO acetaminophen to the adults, whereas before we kept that as only a pediatric option. For adults, it was only an option for the IV acetaminophen. So now there's a change so now that's why you'll see that acetaminophen is just as a weight-based dose. It's going to be pertinent for both adult and pediatric patients. The other change that you will see is hopefully a clarification to the up to dosing that we have for opioid medications. That we have, so even, for example, I'll read the fentanyl one. So fentanyl will be up to 1 microgram per kilogram IVIMIN, maximum 100 micrograms, repeat as needed in incremental doses titrated to effect. Maximum cumulative dose is 200 micrograms. There is a reference to the key points section where this is just a reiteration of what is already in our GOP section, whereas we do restate that the maximum dosages for all medications in the REMAC protocols refer to the maximum weight-based dose for that patient. So hopefully this will have the clarification that I think that it was a little bit confusing, I think, when we first initially rolled this out in March. The other thing that was removed from here is that, again, so this was just a strike through for the medical control option for the administering any standing order medication for patients who have any listed exclusion criteria. This is already felt that this is already, this can already be done as a discretionary order if needed to. But there is also the understanding that there are exclusion criteria or there are contraindications for medications that we do list in the key points section that providers should pay attention to and should, for the most part, abide by for it. So yeah. So I think that's what we have for this protocol.
So this protocol has been going back and forth between medical standards, REMAC, protocol committee for quite a while now. This is probably the 4th or 5th time that we're bringing this forward. The language regarding the incremental dosing has been changed a number of times. There has been some confusion in the field as to the understanding of whether the fact that the weight-based dosing is what dictates eventually the maximum allowable dose. And after going back and forth, we finally, I think, came up with a language that clarifies and will prevent anyone from having any questions as to whether they're allowed to exceed the maximum weight-based dose in order to meet the maximum cumulative dose. So hopefully this language will help clear it. I think that more than anything, this is personally, I think, is a training issue, but now the wording in the protocol is provides clarity for that. Does any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly. So administer one of the following. So if you do A or B and it says administration of additional opioid may be considered for severe persistent pain. Does that mean if you give A and B, you can go to C or D without falling?
Yeah, so that's correct. So that was actually language that we had, I think it was like 2 years ago when we had the introduction of the non-opioid medications. Because I think that there was always like that fear that if we give, like, I think at that time it was only ketorolac. So if we give ketorolac, that if the patient still has persistent pain, can we still give like another opioid medication on top?
Yeah, just wanted to, I thought that's how it read. I wanted
Yep.
to make sure that was the case because the state collaborative is a little different.
I just have a question. Apologize, I was out of the country for the last protocol meeting. So for morphine, is the weight-based maximum we're saying is 0.2 milligrams per kilogram? Because it's 0.1 up to 0.1, and then you can repeat it. Is that the way we're intending it to read, that the weight-based maximum is 0.2 mg per kg for morphine?
Let's see that.
I
And the
know,
weight-based dosing is 0.1 milligrams per kilogram with a maximum of 5.
Right.
You can do that twice.
That's right. The intent that you can do that twice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's on check.
But you can't go like 0.2 in one dose.
Right. No, I agree. I got you.
Okay.
Yeah, not to change any of the content, but just. There's an assumption that this is all ordinal, right? Do we need, we don't allow. Do we want to be more, do we want to provide some clarity and say, as one of the key points, administer a non-opioid analgesic, and it fails, or do we want to say, well, these are up to you, if they're 10 out of 10, you want to jump to fentanyl?
I think this is a training
Because it's
issue.
really is
Yeah.
their choice
I
to
really
decide.
think this is a training issue. There are some cases where you might want to actually give your own opiate at the get-go, right? So I mean, we can't teach, everything in the protocols. I think this is a training issue. And, if needed, if you want to look at it further, later on. But I wouldn't want to prevent this protocol from getting passed through finally. Okay, any further discussion on this protocol?
Can I just ask a question?
No, we're now version one. No,
Yep.
Oh, it's another one.
There's another one.
there's another
Yeah.
one that would be later, but I first want to approve this one,
So
okay?
That's the one that
this
you
one
have in
is
your,
version one.
that is correct.
Why
The
don't we
one that
just-
is not highlighted.
We'll get to a suggestion that was brought up. Okay, and we'll talk about that. I just want to approve this protocol first,
Yes.
please,
You want to approve this one as is,
As
and then
is.
we'll add the other change.
if needed.
Yes.
They got brought as two separate board motions because they got approved as two separate.
Got
motions.
it, okay, understood.
We talked to Dr. Langston.
No, I just
who,
wanted to
approved
make
the
sure that
procedure.
that's what we were doing.
Exactly.
Okay,
So let's do a roll call on this one.
so let's vote on this current protocol that you see in front of you, and then there's another version that will come further.
General pain management, adult pediatric, version one. Pamela Lai,
In favor.
Adrian Cucurello,
In favor?
Nicholas Alexander,
Yes.
Lauren Casturco,
Yes.
Michael Redlener,
Approved.
Joseph Bode.
I ask another silly question.
No,
I don't know, I'm only gonna wait and see the books. And yeah, they should be in the hospital. And the patient transported by. Idea, I guess, the idea is the way it should be. Give you a field med in the field. Training.
Oh, but I think it addresses the issue that many people wait for me. If they have a 4 or 5 out of 10, they'll do 10, and they'll take a better.
Don't have a spec.
Hold on.
Transport.
All right, well, guys, let's stop. Stop. We're in the middle of a vote, so we're gonna discuss this before we can, and we'll discuss it when the next version comes. So let's finish the vote and then we can discuss. There's new one yet, in favor of, thanks.
Art Cooper,
I'm gonna say as well.
Ed Jarvis, Mark Cantor.
Approved.
Robert Ruffey,
Approved.
Laura Avicoli. Cindy Basilio, Matthew Harris, Ben Zabar,
In favor,
sorry,
in favor, approved.
Paul Barbara,
Approved.
David Benelli,
Yes, finally.
Peter Wire. Okay,
Okay, thank you. Are we okay, guys? Okay.
give me a second. Jeff, I called you, haven't said. Oh, I called Lauren, sorry.
Right, they vote.
We both approved.
My mind over here.
We'll have it.
No, since.
Long time.
Fifteen in favor, 2 abstain.
I have to vote, which is I will vote in favor and go back.
Thank you.
Okay, for that pass. Next.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so the next is a slight change. It's an addition of the medication ibuprofen to the pain management protocol. So it was brought into 2 phases because it was suggested as from Yedidia that we should, if this was sort of the one section that was a little bit more debatable or something that I think that it may be a little bit more controversial and might stir up a little bit more discussion. This is why we brought this into 2 phases, because we didn't want to necessarily muddy any of the work that was done without this one addition to it. So this version of the protocol is all the same changes that we just approved. But as you'll see highlighted in yellow is the addition of ibuprofen, PO on here for adult and pediatric patients. I think that we did have quite a bit of discussion at medical standards for this medication. And we bring this forward to REMAC for
Well,
review.
You can just give us some historical enlightenment. The discussion was about the fact that it's PO, was it about the fact that it's ibuprofen?
No, the discussion
What
was
was the
whether we should carry it, the discussions, essentially the discussion is whether we need to add another PO alternative when we already just approved for adults as well, acetaminophen. And we have acetaminophen for pediatrics and for adults now. And then some felt strongly that we should also have ibuprofen as an option for providers to administer. Some were quoting the anti-inflammatory effects, whether that is important with our short transfer times or not, I'm not sure. Some people feel strongly about it, and that's why it was discussed quite extensively in medical standards, and it was bought as a separate version here to REMAC for discussion and possible approval of the protocol.
I just want to go on the record as I'm opposed to this. I think there's a lot of discussion about, well, it's over the counter. I think there's plenty of over the counter medications, whether it's Imodium for diarrhea or Visine for irritated eyes or Pepcid, where we don't currently have it in our protocols because there's not good evidence that it's, those medications are appropriate for EMS. I think there's concern in the ER that there are, certain conditions, whether it's a surgical abdomen where, is this going to increase the risk of bleeding with platelet dysfunction? The fact that patients can take it on their own because it's over the counter, patients can sort of take whatever they want. But I personally don't feel like we should have this as a medication for EMS. So I am not in favor of this change.
So I agree with that. In addition, you have the option control act taking the IM.
Okay. Dr. Bo.
Random common sense, giving oral meds at the best level. Want to transport the patient? Right. So you're gonna give Tylenol, you're gonna give Motrin, you're gonna give Imodium. In the ER, it is different. We're not gonna transport that patient. We're not gonna go and wait 30 minutes to see how he's doing in the field. We should treat the pain. Some kind of stigma here attached to narcotics. Maybe I'm feeling that. For what? Has anybody ever broken anything? It's painful.
Art and then Rob.
I agree with Joe. I think that adding PO medications to the formulary, which are in all likelihood not going to take significant effect by the time the patient is at the hospital in this short transporter system, makes no sense. And I would argue that not only should we not include ibuprofen, but that we should remove acetaminophen. I will make that.
A second. Okay, so this is the discussion now. We'll get to your question, Sam, but right now we've shifted the discussion to whether or not we should remove acetaminophen from the protocol. Doing a seconded motion to remove acetaminophen, but that's what we're discussing now. The PO is acetaminophen. That's where the discussion has switched.
Dr. Bo.
Dr. Bo seconded Art Cooper's motion. All right, Robert.
So just on the flip side, the reason that this was brought up was not because of transport time, but rather the wait time often that the patients wait before they get into a bed. That either the patients that have mild pain that then don't go into a resus room and go into a hallway or to a waiting room.
EMS problem, it's a hospital problem. Running an ER for 40 years is a hospital problem.
All right, so we have let's go in order here. Paul,
Matt, you go.
then David, then Matt. Paul.
This is a shift in our situation. And opiate crisis put all of us off guard, right? We all didn't see it coming and now it's here. So having non-opiate medications is the mark of an evolved EMS system. An old poo-poo oral medications, they could have taken it, but the people who call EMS in our city aren't always calling for emergencies. And that's not a hospital problem, that's a fact. The third thing is adding in IV dosing creates error risk for our providers. Error risk that they may not necessarily need to bear. And I know it sounds silly and frivolous to give oral medications, but they're safe, they're efficacious, and they belong in this system. I was one of the people that proposed the ibuprofen, not because I think people should get Motrin for an EMS run, but more because what happens when oral Tylenol's out? And having a redundant oral med was the reason for this. Can't say I would practice this way or call EMS and expect Tylenol and Motrin to be given. But if we're gonna go down having the oral availability, having redundant meds, so we don't have to do an emergent thing whenever, the maker stop making oral acetaminophen. But that's part of the reason, and I urge all of you to think about the people who show up and the provider safety as part of this reason.
David?
So, I want to divide my, what I have to say to two. So first of all, regarding the motion of removing any oral medication, I think that I agree with Paul, we should have oral medications. It's important for pediatric patients where we might feel a little less comfortable to give IV or IM or IN medication. So that's why we had already for a while the oral acetaminophen liquid option for kids. Some people felt that it's important to also have acetaminophen as for an adult as well in a tablet. I am not opposed to that. I think it's a good idea. I agree with Dr. Bove that whether they wait in the waiting room for 2 hours or not, that's a hospital problem. That's not an EMS problem. We should address the pain of our patients, as needed. So I think that we should have oral medication. I just don't think we should have ibuprofen in that list. For the simple reason that for a couple of reasons. For a couple of reasons. First of all, there's a lot of training involved. Yes, even though you can buy it over the counter, we have to train our providers. When you're a small EMS system, then it's probably easy. When you're a very large EMS system, then it involves already training, retraining, stocking, restocking. And I don't know what the yield benefit is, especially for a large EMS system like the FDNY, when you do have already an oral option like Tylenol, which is probably less harmful than the potential complications of Motrin and potential side effects, not complications. So I don't see the benefit of adding Motrin, ibuprofen to this list. I do see a benefit of Tylenol. We must remember that acetaminophen. We must remember that acetaminophen allergy and contraindications are very, very rare. Thank you.
Two quick points. I think that we do not adequately treat, speaking as one of the two pediatric people in the room, we do not adequately treat pediatric pain in the field with our narcotics. 18% of kids with documented severe pain do not get a narcotic out of 100% of kids with a pain scale of 6. I think it is a non-patient centric approach to say it's the hospital's problem. The motto, I think, of this year's EMS week is care begins here. You're started with continuity care. So if we can give a kid or a 25-year-old who has 4 out of 10 pain a gram of Tylenol so they can go sit in the waiting room because it's not our problem where they sit, that's fine. But we can reduce their pain from going to an 8. Maybe they don't get that. So I think we have to recognize that we've been advocating for years to recognize it's part of the continuum of care. To throw our hands up and say it's not a problem, I think is short-sighted.
Thank you. Ben, and then Mike.
Similar to Dave, David, I, to be clear, am in favor of keeping PO acetaminophen. I'm against the PO ibuprofen. And also I'll mention that, we, in our current, 2023 protocols that we just approved, we have, PO acetaminophen for children. We just sort of added this recently. I think we should keep that. It's the addition of the PO ibuprofen I'm not in favor of. And I also mentioned, the military is so concerned about ibuprofen. They use ibuprofen NSAIDs for their oral, trauma pill packs. They use Mobic. They are actually looking at trying to get soldiers not to take ibuprofen in combat zones because they're concerned about the risk of bleeding. You could say it's oral, but I think there are some real concerns there. So
I think that there's a few points that I'd like to make. One is that I agree with Paul, which is we need a non-opiate option. We need another non-opiate option. I think there's a range of substances that we're called for and that we need to have that option. I feel that Tylenol is a no-brainer. I feel, acetaminophen is a no-brainer, and ibuprofen, I feel mixed out. There's a couple things about the way the protocol is written. One thing about it, which is even if you're giving oral meds, you have to obtain IV access. So just the way that it's written there, I don't know what's above there, but we should address that if that's something that we are, why do they need an IV if you're giving oral medications? So that might be something we want to address. The other thing that I think we need to be conscientious of is unconscious bias. It is because I do think that we're very judgmental as a profession, both in the emergency department and in EMS, related to treating people's pain based on what they look like, with how you judge them in the field. So I think we have to be a little bit acknowledge that there is a potential for making a lot of judgment about patients that we see and what is real pain and what isn't real pain. And then making a decision based on what we give them. So I think that we just have to be conscious of it. I support these changes, but we have to be conscientious of this and include it in our training when we think about what we do. So.
Hold on one second. Yeah. Paul, then Peter, and then Art.
Just like to clarify that we don't have to carry everything in the medical control option. So if something is there as a medical control option, it's not a necessity for an agency to carry it or train it.
These are understanding orders.
Still to do one person. You don't have to carry it.
Clear it all. And
You may have just answered.
Hold on, Paul is finishing.
I'd like to call the question.
Okay.
I always wanted to say.
I have just a question, a point of information.
Yeah.
Point of information. Point of information, just
Yes.
priority, right? If we approve this, does that mean all ambulances have to carry it? Or is it just, it is available?
Control, the standing orders, so any option would be appropriate. Meaning if you have the option for acetaminophen, the option for ibuprofen, you would only have to carry one, or neither, because you can carry just IV medication.
Typically one of those options.
Correct. Okay, Art.
Thank you. Just to take a couple of steps back and remember when we first approved, a pain management protocol, these many years ago. The idea was we were treating severe pain. We're treating, patients with finger fracture. We're treating patients with severe burns. Pain that we know is really debilitating. And I think we all felt that that was an appropriate way to go. Now, I don't personally accept the fact that, that mild pain is something that needs to be treated in the field. I understand that, that we're in a quote unquote patient-centric world, but I don't necessarily believe that treating mild pain in the field, particularly in children, when it's, when it's difficult, enough, with kids to figure out what's going on without a trained hand in the emergency department to look the kid over. I don't see the necessity. I think it's a huge expense, to be carrying, oral medications that are going to provide relatively little benefit, to our patient population. And that's why I sided with Joe. I think this is a bad idea, and I think it misses the point of our original intent, which was to make sure patients with severe pain, were not suffering. Mild pain's part of life. Probably half a dozen people in this room have a headache right now. I just don't. I don't understand.
Okay, so.
I just don't understand the need for this. Thank you.
All right. before we keep going, because this can really go on for a very long time. We're gonna vote right now on whether or not to remove PO options, which was Art's and Joe's.
No,
vote.
No, it was only to remove ibuprofen. PO,
No, Bill Tyler.
no, PO Tylenol. I didn't say a word about the ibuprofen. It was only to remove acetaminophen.
PO.
PO, yeah, correct.
Right, so, but it was also to not to remove this language about PO ibuprofen as well. Or do you want to remove both? PO
No,
options?
no, I,
No.
there, let me
Your
finish.
correction, your motion, that was the motion that was on the table right now, was to remove the PO options for ibuprofen and acetaminophen.
That was not my motion,
Okay,
but,
so let's clarify.
but, let me clarify, okay? I am not in favor of the change to add ibuprofen. That's a different matter. My motion was specifically about removing
Okay,
acetaminophen.
so if
The
that's the
problem
case, if that's the case, then that is exactly the protocol we just voted on. So we're not gonna vote on that again.
No, that's not right.
That is, what we just voted on was to add the PO acetaminophen. That was the first vote that you abstained and Joe abstained and passed anyway. That was that vote.
Whatever you want, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
You know, that we are allowed as a body to
Okay, so
revisit previous
let's vote again on
decisions.
it. Fine. Robert. No, so let's vote again. All in favor?
Hold on.
No, we're gonna vote on the motion that's on the table.
Did we have a second?
Okay, we did.
Motion on the table, the only legitimate motion on the table right now is ibuprofen. Yes or no? The motion to remove
come on.
acetaminophen can't be done unless someone who was opposed agrees to put it back on the table. Otherwise, that's to wait till next time.
Wait a minute.
Want to reconsider, what you want to do is reconsider.
Motion to reconsider.
Motion to reconsider. A motion,
But it was seconded.
Yes.
whatever it is, the motion to
Valid or
reconsider.
no?
Motion to reconsider can only be approved at the same meeting if someone who voted against it says they want to change
But you
it.
abstained.
Wants to change your mind.
Right. Wants to allow you to reconsider.
Okay, so we can't vote on it. That's the second motion, the second motion was on the table. Okay, so then the only thing that we're talking about right now is this addition of ibuprofen, which is in front of you on the screen.
That's what you.
Any questions about that? I have one over here and then two. So Maury and then Lauren.
I'm a little torn on this because I agree with pretty much everything everybody here has said tonight. The only point that I'll make is from looking down the road and seeing this play itself out in the field. How exactly you're going to train paramedics to decide when to give ibuprofen versus ketorolac?
Medical website.
Then that needs to be clarified, because otherwise, if you have all of them, if you have access to all of these medications, then they have discretion which one to give.
Right.
Yes.
And you're training people and have to teach them how to do it.
Good job.
I assume that all the learned physicians around there.
There's
have a way of knowing which is the right way.
my point is that there's a big difference between acetaminophen and ketorolac and two NSAIDs.
That's what training is all about, I assume.
Okay, so I'm gonna just so you guys know, if this passes, I'm just gonna rely very, very heavily on this body to help us train medics on how to determine whether they should give the PO option versus the IV or IM option. Other than PEDS.
Thank you.
Brad Leonard's an expert.
I think it's very relevant before we vote on anything to circle back to Michael's point that are we requiring IV access if we're giving PO meds? 'Cause-
No, we'll correct that to right as needed or something. We'll just add
Oh,
something.
so that we can change? We don't have to vote
I
on
think
that?
that's clarification. So we can vote on that too. Yeah.
Well,
So can't vote on my motion.
okay, so, all right, so again,
I just want. I mean, that's it.
no. All right, so the answer to your question, Lauren, is that technically according to the protocol, you'd have to put in an IV before getting to the pain management. But that's something that can be worked on a protocol at a later time. The question on the table right now is we want to add acetaminophen, I'm sorry, ibuprofen is an option in the pain management protocol.
Yeah.
You're right in that, right now, you have to put it.
I'm in
Yes.
support of all these PO meds, but if we're hiring IVs for.
That is a good point that has to be addressed.
Well, if at the risk of you yelling at me,
I will not yell at anyone.
you can
Make an amendment.
make an amendment. If she knows what she wants to do, it has to be seconded. You would vote on that amendment, then you come back to the ibuprofen thing, vote on that, and then you come back, and then you're done. So I can't.
I'd like to make an amendment. For number two, obtain intravenous access, period. If IV access unavailable, can still proceed with PO pain.
No, because you have to have an IV. You're saying that IV access.
Well, you can't take it out completely because you need an IV to give you
IV access. is-
Yeah, as indicated.
That's why you can't,
That's-
I'm ready to do it now.
Right,
Can't
that
take
could
it
go back to work.
You don't have a good solution to that.
All right.
Let's try that.
So I think that the IV access question should be
Run the
discussed
clock
in
here. Gotta go
protocol.
get it.
Yes, correct. I think that right now the question on the table. is
I
whether we
disagree.
add
I think, I don't think that protocol is gonna come back to this committee with any other or medical standard. With any other suggestion other than what Dr. Kosoko just suggested. So why don't we just vote on
Make
that?
an amendment.
Second.
Can we change number two, obtain IV access to obtain IV access as indicated?
Clinically.
Thank you
As
so
clinically
much.
indicated?
Second.
Third,
All right, so any discussion on that?
I hate it.
Then
With the.
You know, you can make the argument if you don't need an IV because you're just giving PO Tylenol. So number one, why are you doing cardiac and pulse oximetry? Why are you putting the person on a monitor if you're gonna give PO Tylenol?
All going down.
You're right, also that was there because. I think-
It's the same sort of issue as that.
All right, so right now, the seconded motion is this amendment. So that's what we're gonna vote on. If there's any questions about that line, number two, that's all I want to discuss right now. Hearing none, all in favor of that change, number two, please raise your hand.
Can you clarify the change again?
The change is to add, as indicated under IV access. That's the only change we're making right now. 1, 2, 3.
Raising shoulders.
Okay, that passes, so that change is now part of the protocol. We're now looking at the entire protocol with ibuprofen. And that is what we're up to now.
Ibuprofen itself.
The ibuprofen added to this protocol, correct? Now, my only question for option A and B, and maybe this was discussed in protocol, is it says may be considered for persistent severe pain. Now, meds don't generally work that fast. So are we gonna be giving everybody PO and then an IV or IM option? Because how will we define, are we just gonna say that's up to Morty in training to define persistent pain?
Morty.
or Morty.
I would discuss the protocol, that's my question.
Just an ambulance driver.
Would that discuss the protocol?
So this language, like for the be considered for persistent severe pain, this was or has already been introduced, what, 2 years ago when we had the introduction for Ketorolac. It was there as saying for persistent severe pain. So this language was just added onto.
No,
the Yeah.
the only difference is that Ketorolac works significantly quicker than a PO medication. Well, because IM or IV is gonna work
Right.
quicker. That's the only difference. I mean, PO meds tend to take 30 minutes to work.
Yeah.
Right? So if that's the case, you're not gonna see that. You should see that change while you have the patient. And then the question is, how do we define that?
Even if they have severe pain, we give them, yeah.
I mean, the reality of it is, there's a big subjective component of this. We all do
Correct.
this every day in the ER, right? But I don't think it's untrainable to say.
No,
these
I
are
agree. I just
such-
was wondering if it was discussed.
You know. For a fracture, somebody might use a narcotic first line, but for, leg swelling, they might just give it Tylenol. I think that's reasonable.
Okay, any further discussion on option B? Hearing none, let's do a roll call for this protocol with option B. Yeah.
So this is version 2 of general pain management. Adding option B, ibuprofen
That's modified.
as modified. Dr. Pamela Lai,
No.
Adrian Torello,
Oppose. Is that oppose? Oppose, yeah. Which is no.
Nicholas Alexander,
Yes.
Jeff Braybridge,
Opposed.
Reed Caldwell, Michael Redlener.
In favor.
Joseph Bo,
No.
Arthur Cooper,
Heck, no.
Ed Jarvis,
No.
Mark Cantor,
In favor.
Robert Ruby,
No.
Laura Ivacoli, Cindy Basilios,
Oppose. Pause.
I was thinking.
Matt Harris,
Opposed.
Ben Zabar,
Opposed.
Paul Barbara,
I'd be in favor.
David Benelli,
I join Dr. Cooper's vote.
David?
No.
Peter Wire,
No. Okay.
We got a problem. Now that this just failed. Change to line 2, that's also failed. So if you want to put the change in line 2 back, you have to have now another motion and vote again.
No, but acetaminophen is still on the.
No.
Motion to put this, I'm making a motion to put that language from line 2 into the protocol that we approved before.
All in favor of approving line 2 in the original protocol with just acetaminophen, please raise your hand.
Why? It's a protocol change.
It's okay. Fine.
I don't think a roll call.
Roll call again. You're killing me. Killing me. You're killing me.
In the yeas and nays.
we are voting again.
The time is getting short.
We're voting again on the change on item number 2 to add in, on version 1, to add in as clinically indicated to obtain intravascular.
As indicated. That's what we see there. Yeah.
Okay. And okay, does everybody understand what we're voting on? Here we go. Okay. Am I,
Yes, in favor.
Adrian Torello,
Yes.
Nick Alexander,
Yes.
Jeffrey Raybert,
Yes.
Michael Redlener.
Indeed.
Keep that symbiote.
Yeah.
Joseph Bo. No. Arthur Cooper.
No.
Ed Jarvis.
Yeah.
Mark Cantor.
Yes.
Robert Crucy.
Yes.
Laura Ivacoli. Cindy Basilios.
In favor.
Matthew Harris. Ben Zabar.
In favor.
Paul Barbara.
Still in favor.
David Benelli.
Yes, again.
Peter Wire.
Yes.
Okay. All right. 12, 13, 14, 15, Dr. Schenker. Carries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Ben Ellis.
Yes, so there's one more motion that we want to bring forward. We want to bring the changes in language for the fentanyl and morphine. We want to make that as an emergency change because there has been confusion regarding the dosing in the field. We want to make only for options, what are they, C and D?
Yep.
Yeah, only options C and D to somehow make them as an emergency change and not wait for the next round of protocols.
Well, what's the change?
The wording is changed.
No, what is the new word?
So the current wording as we see here, the one that's that says for the fentanyl up to 1 microgram per kilogram.
We
But that language.
That language
The
is-
question is, you're now making a motion to make it an emergency change.
Yes, just those two, just for those two options.
That's the motion already approved. The motion-
No, it's already approved, just to make the wording that we approved now for options C and D
As an emergency.
as an emergency change.
Counter motion. I would make a motion to just release the entire protocol as an emergency change, because the only things we're changing, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're adding PO Tylenol for adults and this language here and the if indicated for the IV. So rather than create confusion where you have the emergency release of this opioid language, and then we're going to release the rest of it later, that's basically the same. I would just release this whole protocol as an emergency, like rolling the protocol.
The thing that we just finished, we spent about a half hour discussing that there's gonna be some training and education involved in these changes. So I don't know that if you want to add the training and education, I don't think that you could emergency release it tomorrow and have the time for the training and education. Don't think so, please.
I think the other thing that you did was we made the narcotic follow-up, the opiate follow-up was medical control report. After giving the,
You have to give it 180.
correct,
No, only for.
that was medical
Tylenol.
control. Just, correct, this brought that up into standing orders, it's a pretty big change.
Wait, what? But I agree, it's make it either all or nothing emergency change.
Yeah.
Make it
All
easy.
right.
Everything,
It's up to you guys,
I don't care.
either an emergency, do the whole.
Hold on. So can I understand the nature of the emergency? Like, what do we think of the emergency?
Has there been dosing errors? Like, what's the reason for the?
Yes, that's the dosing is a fentanyl.
Dosing is
Right.
That's why we have like change for the dosing. Does this help correct that? And everybody wants.
So the dosing errors were patients were getting too high dose? Is that what's happening?
Sometimes
They were giving more than the minimum maximum.
More than what was intended.
Right, they were giving more than by weight than they were supposed to.
And
So
I also say from a training standpoint, right now, our current paramedic course, we've had issues explaining the current 2023 protocol to them. Because this would clarify this. So this would actually help our ongoing training if this is
Safety issue,
released.
patients getting wrong doses.
Yeah.
That's why it's.
Any,
I second that one.
second the motion to make the entire protocol, okay.
I understand the necessity to make an emergency protocol change, but we need help from protocol committee to include some piece of training in the emergency change. Some explanation for it, and we'd like it to come from protocol committee. When we send out the advisory, it should have something.
Just language just to
So
explain.
the language change isn't the issue, that's easy to train,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
it'll actually clarify things. I think the bigger concern, and this is really for the physicians here to be in agreement on, is you're moving up to these things from medical control options. To standing orders,
What do you?
What-
do you
what
mean?
moved up?
Because these were always as understanding orders.
but you had to call for a repeat after you gave Tylenol. You had to call for the opiate
No,
after giving IV Tylenol.
no, I think the current one you could.
At
I'll
least-
pull it up. I
At
believe. it
least I
was-
remember, at least for the Ketorolac, I remember that you could give like another opioid option. Tylenol, I don't remember, but I know for Ketorolac, I think that it was there.
Available.
Their primary.
You can only vote.
Yeah, it's the same language is there for the Ketorolac, but it's not for the acetaminophen.
That was my only concern, but as long as physicians are comfortable with it, the language change is not an issue. Yeah, the language change clarifies things, and it makes it better.
So the current motion on the table is to make this entire protocol an emergency change that would be released as soon as the language. is completed.
This is general pay management version #1.
Correct.
Number one, with the new change with the as indicated.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on that before we vote? All right, hearing none, let's roll call vote.
What emergency code includes that as a one?
So that, as soon as the language can be voted. About the advisory to the. So the advisory language will be prepared. That will come and the executive committee will release it as soon as we can.
Okay. So we're voting on emergency implementation of general pay management version #1, which includes the change to item #2. Okay. Camera Live.
Yes, in favor.
Do we need this a roll call, actually? I mean, it's not a protocol change, it's just,
Just have it on record, just do it.
Just to have, just be fast.
Adrian Cortello.
in
Cortello.
favor?
Nick Alexander.
Yes.
Jeffrey Raven.
In favor.
Mike Redlener.
In favor.
Joseph Bo. Art Cooper. Ed Jarvis.
Yes.
Mark Cantor. Robert Krupe.
In favor.
Laura Ivan Coley. Cindy Basilios.
In favor.
Matt Harris. Ben Zabar.
In favor.
Paul Barbara.
In favor.
David Benelli.
In favor.
Peter Ward.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. All right, Dr. Benelli, anything else?
That concludes, the action items of the Medical Standards Committee. The next meeting is on, June 6th at 3 p.m. virtually. You'll have the Zoom link. I'm sure Michelle will send it again. So that's for medical standards.
Okay.
It was, no. No, I think that Ed's tried to put something on his calendar. Yeah, I think.
Ed canceled it.
No, it's still there. It's still there.
David, anything else?
Just if you, the ECPR tag, just a quick report. We've made some, thanks to Dr. Redlener, we've made some strides with the American Heart Association with regard to the database. We have moved forward to use the Get With the Guideline Resuscitation database, which will help us obtain get the data and make sure for QA/QI and research, hopefully research purposes as well. They have granted New York City REMAC and the FDNY the super user use of the data, so that's a move forward. 5 out of 6 hospitals have agreed to participate in the project, and now we can, we're still making in the steps of talking about training and implementation. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Berkowitz isn't here, so there's no inter-facility report. There's no RTAC report. Regional Council did not meet, CMAC did not meet, and there's no unfinished business. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Unless there's any new business. No? All right. Joe.
Being reminder, the deadline of that. Running event to be before. All work to be voted on.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.